A woman once joined a rich family and heartlessly abandoned the man she had loved for many years, never expecting that one day he would reappear in her life as the boyfriend of a prostitute. Afraid that he might have chosen that woman to take revenge on her, she did everything she could to destroy their relationship, even threatening to kill herself. But despite her desperate clinging, the man, Malu, remained completely unmoved and even warned her never to harm his girlfriend again, or he would expose all her dark secrets. It turned out that 6 years ago, she had accidentally killed someone, and Malu had taken the blame, going to prison in her place. Yet, while he was behind bars, she married her current rich husband. Now, terrified that Malu might ruin the luxurious life she had fought so hard to get, she bribed local gangsters to beat him up and gave their old, intimate photos to his girlfriend, Enki, knowing that someone as proud and cold as Enchi would never be able to forgive such deceit and would surely break up with him. But when Enchi learned the truth, instead of hating Malu, she felt nothing but pain and compassion for his tragic past. She brought him to the place where they had first met, saying that since their story started there, it should also end there. And she told him she wanted to break up. She admitted that at first she dated him playfully, but their difference in family status had made her feel uncomfortable and insecure. She told Malu that he must live happily, and even at the end, she didn't want him to carry guilt in his heart. Malu couldn't understand why the woman who had said yesterday that she wanted to be with him was suddenly breaking up today, but he didn't stop her, because he felt he had no right to. Yet as soon as Enchi left, pain filled his heart. When she returned home, the chairman locked her up. Of course, this was all that woman's doing. She told Enchi that because of her, Malu had been beaten badly by the chairman, and if they didn't end their relationship soon, Malu would surely die. The truth was, after they parted yesterday, Malu was ambushed and beaten by a group of thugs sent by her, because in her mind, if she couldn't have that man, no one else should. Holding a small cloth doll in her hands, Enchi remembered Malu's first smile toward her and their first kiss. She didn't care about anything anymore. Even if Malu had deceived her, as long as there was still a trace of true love in his heart, she would never let go. She tied the curtains together, climbed down from the window in the cold rain, and though the raindrops hit her skin like ice, she felt nothing. Finally, she rang Malu's doorbell. Her emotional confession completely broke down the walls of Malu's heart, and he pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. That tender scene was seen by the woman standing not far away, and she saw everything, every touch, every tear. Malu, noticing her, only hugged Enchi tighter, while she turned away in humiliation and rage. Soon after, lawyer An came to her with shocking news. The chairman had seen a secret video of her and the lawyer together. The chairman couldn't tolerate betrayal from the two people he trusted most, so he ordered Junhei to send both of them to prison to clear Enki's path of obstacles. The lawyer told her that the chairman had already changed his will in secret. All his inheritance would now go to Enchi, and neither she nor her precious son would get a single cent. Unable to accept that everything she schemed for had turned to dust, she came up with a vicious plan. She would use Enchi's love for Malu to set a trap and force Malu back to her side to help her reclaim everything. She called Malu, pretending her brother wanted to kill her, smashing a bottle against a mirror to create a scene of chaos, knowing that since childhood her brother had always beaten her, and every time Malu had protected her, she knew he would do it again. Then she messaged Enki, saying that she and Malu were having lunch together at a villa in the countryside. Although Enchi already knew their past, her heart still hurt. Malu, though fully aware that this was another of her schemes, still went there. She fell to her knees crying, confessing her regrets, how she wished she hadn't abandoned him, how she regretted sending men to hurt him. Malu just stood silently, watching her act out her drama. But outside the door, Enchi had arrived and heard everything. To her shock, it sounded as if Malu had never loved her, and she left in despair, her whole body numb, her blood freezing inside her veins. What she didn't know was that Malu had truly fallen in love with her, and after she left, he completely cut ties with that woman. Seeing Enchi drive away, Malu knew this was yet another trick, and though he wanted revenge, he realized he had hurt the one person he should have protected. He knew it was time to end everything. Even without Malu's help, the woman still had one last card to play, a collection of evidence proving the Taishan Group's illegal activities. She had planned to use it to blackmail the chairman into rewriting his will, but the old man suffered a fatal heart attack out of rage. She had only wanted money, not his death, and rushed to call for help, but lawyer Anne stopped her, saying this was their final chance. With the chairman dead, she would become the first heir. His words made her hesitate, and she finally agreed. But then the lawyer noticed the chairman's phone line was still connected. He had been on a call with Junhei the whole time. The lawyer immediately told Junhei that his own father was was the one who had caused Enki's mother's death and warned him that if he wanted his father to live peacefully, he must keep everything he just heard a secret forever. Meanwhile, Malu finally found Enchi by the sea. He told her that from the beginning he had been deceiving her, coldly claiming he loved only that woman, and that his relationship with Enchi had always been for gain, not emotion. Enchi refused to believe it and begged him to leave with her, to go somewhere no one knew them and start over again. But Malu cruelly pushed her away and said Zai Shi had already agreed to return to Malu's side, so he was no longer of any use to her. Malu's words pierced Enchi's heart like a needle, sharp and merciless. But Malu himself was also in pain, because deep down, he had already fallen in love with Enchi. He knew, however, that if Enchi stayed by his side, the mad and jealous Zai Shi would only grow more vicious and hurt him even more. Soon, Enchi received a message from Junhei saying that his father had suddenly passed away. He couldn't believe it. His father had been perfectly fine when he left. In an instant, love and family were both gone, and Enchi was left with nothing. In utter despair, he turned his car around and saw Malu across the road. Their eyes met. Malu saw the hopeless tears in Enchi's eyes just before he drove straight toward him. Malu didn't dodge. Instead, he faced the car head-on. A year later, Enchi vanished from the hospital, and Zai Shi became the real controller of the Taishan group. Junhei, too occupied with his father's death, didn't have time to interfere with Zai Shi or Malu. Malu began a new life, becoming a professional con artist. To earn money for his sister's medical treatment, he sold his conscience, deceiving people and shattering families. Some even committed suicide because of his scams. Yet, he felt no guilt and said it was their own fault for being too foolish and trusting. His sister grew furious seeing what he had become, saying she would rather have the brother who once worked as a host than this heartless man. Zaiji felt Malu had become an empty shell of a person, a walking corpse with no will to live. He hadn't even been this broken back when the whole thing with Zai Shi happened. Zaiji didn't know what Malu had gone through, but he hoped he could return to his old self. Malu listened silently without responding. Meanwhile, though Zai Shi had become the acting chairwoman of the company, her scandalous past as a mistress still drew ridicule from the rich society wives. One day, she entered Enki's old room, looked at his photos, and swore to herself that she would never let Enki come back and ruin everything she had fought to gain. She ordered the servants to clear out all of Enchi's belongings the next morning and turn the room into a playroom for her son. Every night, Malu sat staring at Enchi's photo, because only then did he feel like he was truly alive. One morning, while leaving home, he heard two kids and a woman arguing about how to write the characters of his name. That voice, it was one he had heard countless times in his dreams. Malu froze and slowly turned around. He didn't see the woman's face, but he knew it was Enchi, the girl he had once deeply hurt. At that moment, she was being teased by two kids for writing the name wrong again. Malu picked up a pen and wrote the correct characters on the wall. Enchi looked up and saw him. She looked at him again and again before finally saying she recognized him. He was Zhang Malu. She was so happy and took out her camera, showing him photos of the two of them together. She said she had been in a car accident and lost her memory. All she remembered were her own name and his. She had forgotten everything else, but when she saw him, she just knew. They must have been deeply in love. Malu stood there silently, unable to answer when she asked if they had truly loved each other before. She remembered only his kindness, not the pain she had caused him. Just then, Secretary Xuan arrived, breaking the awkward silence. It turned out that after the car crash, Malu and Junhei, fearing Zai Shi might hurt Enchi again, secretly sent her somewhere safe for treatment. Today, Xuan came to find Malu, hoping he could help Enchi recover her memories. Enchi came to Malu's house, looking around at everything that felt both strange and familiar, and she said with determination that she would remember it all someday. Secretary Xuan told Malu that after the crash, Enchi had forgotten everything. She couldn't read, couldn't tell directions, and couldn't even take care of herself. He also said that Enchi's father's death was surely connected to Zai Shi. Malu listened quietly, filled with guilt. He knew that everything Enchi was suffering now was because of him, and if she continued to stay with him, remembering the past would only bring her more pain. Coldly, he told her they were not lovers, only people who once took care of each other. He said he was busy and didn't want to waste time on someone unimportant. Just then, Zaiji arrived, and Malu, afraid she might see Enchi, quickly pulled Enchi into his arms. Zaiji teased him for hugging in broad daylight, then laughed and left. Malu pushed Enchi away, but she grabbed his hand and asked if he was pretending not to know her just because she had become slow and stupid. She begged him to wait for her. She promised to try hard to remember. Malu told her she really had become stupid and said they were nothing more than acquaintances. Enchi refused to believe him, saying her heart remembered him, that it beat only for him. Malu wanted to stay. He wanted to hold her just like before and never let go, but he couldn't. So he turned and walked away. Heartbroken, Enchi left too. And from the shadows, Zaiji watched her go, pulling out a missing person person notice with a plan forming in his mind. Malu walked away as well, afraid that if he stayed any longer, he would give in to his feelings, hold her, kiss her, but he couldn't because his time was running out. After the car crash, a blood clot had formed in his brain and doctors urged him to get surgery soon, but the operation was risky and he feared he might never wake up. That's why he kept working relentlessly to earn money for his sister's treatment and why he didn't dare face Enchi again. His coldness finally broke Enchi's spirit. He had already started to remember their past, the sweet moments they shared, but he couldn't understand why Malu refused to admit it. Watching his back as he left, Zaiji recognized Enchi and came up with a daring idea. He followed her and secretly recorded a video. Back home, Enchi practiced writing every day, hoping that once she fully regained her memory, Malu would accept her again. Malu later found a note she had left for him, saying she would wait for the day he remembered her, leaving her phone number behind. When he returned home, Zaiji told him that his sister had run away and taken all their money to return it to the families he had scammed. She said she would rather die than see her brother become that kind of person. Zaiji also left, saying living with Malu had become suffocating. Malu took out Enchi's note again. He missed her deeply, but didn't dare go see her. He didn't know whether what he had done was right or wrong anymore. Then Zaiji found Malu's assistant and showed him the video he had secretly filmed of Enchi, saying that in exchange for a 20-floor apartment, he could make Enchi disappear forever. Later, he went to Secretary Schwann's house to find Enchi, claiming to be Malu's brother and saying that Malu had sent him to take her home. Because Enchi had seen Zaiji at Malu's house the day before, he didn't suspect a thing and was overjoyed, thinking Malu had finally come to find him. But soon, Secretary Schwann rushed to Malu, panicked, saying that Enchi had disappeared. Malu immediately remembered that only Zaiji had seen Enchi yesterday. He called him, but no one answered. Then Secretary Schwann suddenly recalled installing a tracking app on Enchi's phone before. Malu grabbed the phone and ran out. Fear filled his chest. He was terrified Zaiji might harm Enchi. He couldn't stand the thought of Enchi being hurt right under his nose, while Zaiji was still daydreaming about the 20-floor apartment he was promised. Finally, Malu found him and stopped his car. He told Malu to help Enchi get everything back and then leave his life forever, promising him endless wealth in return. If he refused, Junhei threatened to tell Enchi everything, that Malu had used him and who he truly was. The words struck deep into Malu's heart. He was terrified of what Enchi might do if he ever learned the truth. At that moment, Zaishi arrived at Malu's house. Now she had more wealth and power than she had ever dreamed of, but none of it brought her happiness because she had lost the man she loved most. When she entered, the place was empty, dust and silence filling what was once familiar, and she stood there looking lost and lonely. Meanwhile, Malu was far away with Enki, who held his hand tightly. In that moment, Malu's eyes hardened with resolve. He would help Enchi take back everything that was rightfully his. The woman who had gained wealth, power, and status had lost too much on the way: her kindness, her innocence, and even the man she loved. She now stood on the opposite side of everything she once believed in. Today was her inauguration as the group's new chairwoman, the final step toward her success. But then Enki appeared, standing before everyone, explaining that his disappearance had been due to a car accident and he had been receiving treatment ever since. The crash had caused him to develop facial blindness, and since his body hadn't fully recovered, he needed a proxy to help him with his duties. That person was Malu, who was also his fiancée. Hearing that, Zaishi's world shattered. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. The man who had once hurt Enchi so deeply was now standing proudly beside him, even engaged to him. But she didn't know that Enchi still hadn't regained his full memory. He didn't even know why he was there, fighting her for the chairman's position. He feared that people might find out about his condition, and even the speech he gave that day had been memorized from the notes Malu prepared for him. He did everything because Malu asked him to. Watching Enchi's bright, happy smile on stage, Malu felt his heart tighten. He didn't have much time left. He worked tirelessly, but his illness worsened. There was no denying that Malu had incredible talent. He not only defeated Zaishi at the board meeting, but also won over many supporters for Enchi. Even Junhei was impressed by his brilliance. Meanwhile, Lawyer An found a small notebook at Secretary Schwann's home filled with childish handwriting. At the end, it read, "I'll wait for the day you remember me," signed by Junhei. Thinking about Enchi's facial blindness, Lawyer An began to suspect that Enchi might be mentally impaired. He sent Secretary Schwann away and sat alone with Enchi, handing him the notebook and asking why he was using something written like a child's diary full of spelling mistakes. Enchi lied, saying it was just an after effect of the car accident and that he was already recovering. The lawyer told him to prove it, to say his own name, and added that he used to be the chairman's trusted aide here to protect him. Enchi froze, not knowing who this man was, his nerves rising under the lawyer's questions. But then he remembered that Malu had shown him this man's photo before, so he picked up a pen and wrote 3 bold characters: "You are a bad man." Then he stood up and left. When When he got home, his sister asked if he had ever traveled with Malu. Enshi looked down sadly and said he didn't remember. His sister encouraged him, saying he could ask Malu to take him on a trip, because sometimes, when two people travel together, they rediscover each other and fall in love all over again. His sister smiled and said that during a trip, people often rediscover their true feelings, that maybe by traveling together, he would feel happiness and joy again. Enshi shook his head softly, unsure, while outside the room, Malu was quietly listening, a faint smile forming on his face as curiosity warmed his heart. The next morning, Enshi woke up, and to his shock, tears filled his eyes as he realized what had happened. Malu had kept his sister's wish. He had brought Enshi on a journey, a real trip together, just the two of them to start something new.